Active listening is hands down one of the most effective ways we can walk alongside someone who has experienced a recent trauma or who wants to process something that happened to them in the past. If we have the opportunity to listen to someone who's experienced a recent trauma, it's really important to try to make that available to them within the first 24 to 48 hours of that event. And here's why. When we experience a traumatic event, it hits our body first. We feel the events of that happen in our physical body, and then it moves up to our brain. The right side of our brain is the emotional side of our brain, and that side of our brain works just a little bit faster than the left side of our brain, which is the logical side of our brain. I think of it as L, left logic. So, that event hits our body, moves up to our brain, and we've got the right side of our brain, that emotional side, processing the events first. It's an emotional experience before it's a logical experience. Sometimes, because of the way our brain works to protect itself from pain, our brain tries to stop that event from moving from the emotional side to the logical side. In order to heal, we need to integrate that memory across our whole brain. If that event gets stuck on the emotional side of our brain, it can be so painful that we actually might not want to feel it. So we start to build buffers around it, and we build walls around it, and we stuff it down and try to hide it in our brain. But in order to really heal, we need to process that memory with someone safe and integrate it across our whole brain. Active listening is a simple way to help integrate a memory across the whole brain. It is a 3-step process, and anyone can do it. The more we practice it, the better we get at doing it. Here are the 3 steps to active listening. First, we're going to begin by asking a question that's a logic question. We're going to tap into the left side of the brain. The question will be something like, what happened? Or what happened first? After the person has answered, then we're going to tie it to an emotional question. And how did that make you feel? So, what happened and how did that make you feel? Third, we are simply going to repeat back exactly what we've heard them say in their own words, with a look of care and concern on our face, so they hear it coming back to them and see that we're with them and we've heard them. That process of being able to tie the logical events and emotional events together helps integrate the memory across the whole brain. Then we do it again. What happened next? And how did that make you feel? Repeat it back. Then what happened? And how did you feel? Repeat it back. And keep going until the person is finished talking. When you've finished, thank them for sharing. And then remember, you might have to come back and reprocess that same event again. It doesn't just happen one time. We need to process events over and over until we feel it's been completely integrated across our brain. One of the reasons that active listening is so challenging is that it requires us to turn off the chatter in our brain. Often, when somebody's sharing something with us, our brain goes, I hear that, and I can relate. I want to connect with you. I actually have a story that goes along with that. Or our brain might say, I can fix that for you. Our brain starts getting active as we start thinking about what they're saying. We want to be listened to as well. However, if we step in with our own story, we shift the focus off of them and turn the focus onto ourselves. And in this situation, we just want to keep the focus solely on the person who is sharing their experience. With active listening, we're making a choice to stay with that person and hold space for them to just simply be heard. So we actually want to turn our brains off to our own stories and fixes and just focus in on what someone else is saying. We want to pay attention to their emotions and help reflect back in their own words what we hear with an expression of care and concern. We also need to get comfortable with sadness and grief. Did you know that there are toxins released in the tears of grief and sadness? It's okay to cry. Crying is healing. It's also okay not to have an answer and not fix something that went wrong. When we share something that's sad, we don't necessarily need anyone to fix it. We just need a place and space to be sad with someone else who's willing to sit with us while we're feeling bad and who cares about us in the middle of that. We also need to get comfortable with questions that don't have answers. Sometimes someone will ask you why this happened to them, and there's not really an answer for that. Things happen to people for reasons that none of us really understand. But what is healing is being able to share your story with someone else. Researchers say that the weight of your story becomes lighter when someone else carries it with you. David Augsburger says it this way: being listened to is so close to being loved that most people don't know the difference. I realize that for many of you, there have been significant traumatic events that have happened to you and to those around you in the recent past. And I hope that this practice of active listening helps you walk alongside someone who is in pain and helps ease their burden. And then, for ourselves, when we listen to someone else and are carrying part of their story, that might be too heavy for us, and we might need to find a safe person who will listen to us as well. Thank you for being willing to walk alongside somebody else who just needs to process something really heavy. As a person who has received that from others as I've walked through my own trauma, I can't overstate how important this is to the healing process. And if you have your own story of trauma, please find someone to share it with as well. You are worth it.